welcome to my Researching Local History of Psychology project. I'm not from the Mankato area, so mine's not from the southern part of Minnesota, but I teach up here in Hermantown. I've done so for the last 15 years, and so my project is on Amberwing, which is a huge resource up here for us in northern Minnesota, specifically here at Hermantown, but also in the Duluth area as well. And so my goal today is to give you a little history on that and show just the impact that this resource and this therapy has had on my students. And so hopefully we'll be able to share that as we go along. So starting, I guess, more than anything is why do we even need Amberwing? Why do we need, psychological, therapeutics and other resources? Well, according to Jacqueline Long, even going back pre-COVID, as of 2017, suicide was the second leading cause of death for teens and youth ages 10 to 18. And for me, having a daughter now getting age 10, this is scary, right? And it all has to do with mental health and other things going on. But that was just something I really was like, holy smokes. And of course, one of the huge risk factors, and I'm going a little extreme with suicide, but it's the reality, is the psychological disorders or mental illness like depression or even a bipolar disorder. And so that's just something we wanted to make sure I was like, this is real. And I've seen students lose interest, as Long brings up, even have trouble concentrating, dropping out of sports and clubs. And so these are things or signs I'm like, this is real. It's not something that's just not going away. So I think it's really worth looking into. And so Long looks into finding help. And one of the biggest things, finding help and how to help, I mean, there's things like the National Suicide Prevention Line and many other types of areas. But the biggest thing to how to help is to encourage them to seek treatment and offer support. This is why I chose Amberwing, and you'll see that as we go along here. Like, Amberwing does this. It's a great opportunity for psychotherapy. They offer medication, as you'll see, and that's why I wanted to look into that. Going a little deeper into the data, more specifically for Minnesota, the Children's Organization did a good survey in 2019, and then they redid it in 2022, and they saw that students reported long-term mental health, which means lasting longer than 6 months, rose over 6% in that time. Especially at risk are some of those members, including the lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer community. And this is important because we have students in classes that are struggling with this and are at risk, and we need to identify that. When you add that to the possibility, like I said on the last one, with suicide, it's like this is scary. When you talk about COVID, of course, you'll hear from my good friend who works at Amberwing, but certainly for high school students, the pandemic added stress for high school students could upset their potential jobs, what they're going to do for college. All those things got a little bit out of whack, if you will, adding more stress, potential to more mental health issues. But then you also have like the grade students, which I have, and that stay-at-home period where they weren't necessarily around with their friends, they didn't have those social interactions. That had a big impact on their emotional and developmental growth. And so we need to do that. I put Hermantown there because, again, I've been here for 15 years, and I just recognize a change in students. Not everyone, but it's certainly something that we need to take into consideration. And so that's why, again, I chose to do this as a resource, choosing Amberwing. So let's talk about the history of Amberwing a little bit. First of all, they recognize the need. This started in 2000 and a little before 2009. The fundraising started in 2009, where they worked with the Miller Dwan, now is Essentia Health, that there was a need, and their vision was clear to create a unique center that would offer integrated solutions for improving young lives and families in a safe haven that feels like home. A place where everyone can learn to think differently about mental wellness so that people can get the help they need at the right time. You'll see I got the website there. That's where I got that from. But I mean, this is what they did. And so officially they started in 2012, and their goal was just to be there for kind of double whammy here, mental health and also substance abuse, which can be together. And overall, you'll hear this word at the end, that goal of creating this innovative, holistic care for their patients and for the people that, for them and their families. So kind of a cool history. You see the building there. It's a beautiful location where they're able to reach out to families in the Northland. The roles that they play here, this is abbreviated. Again, I'll click on the link here and then go back. But I mean, the focus, my more biased focus is on children, youth, and teens and their mental health. I mean, you have grades from grades 1 to 5, 6 to 8, and, you know, high school, 9 to 12. But the biggest thing that I've seen is this 3-week outpatient program. It's called like partial hospitalization, and it helps them go through it. And I put the little image right over here, DBT. Their focus is on dialectical, I always screw that up, behavioral therapy. And it's just been a wonderful resource. And you'll see how while students have used it, it's also being passed on to staff and things like that. And it's just really cool how students have been able to go through that. You add that with the fact that they do with substance use disorder. This is mostly between ages 12 and 18. But this is a higher level of care. And if even more beyond that is needed, they're able to offer that that recommendation or that referral to help teens and their families. So I just want to show this to you real quick, the Amberwing website, because this really does a good job. But you can see here, this is just the main website, and from programs and services to the care team to just about Amberwing, there's questions that are there. It really just is a great resource to use and to share with others who may be going through that. So yeah, there it is. I'll let you take a look at that later if you want. It's on my resources if you need. So moving on then. For my primary source, I couldn't help but just go to actually a long-term friend of mine, Chelsea Harju, who has been there for almost 10 years at Amberwing. She's been a therapist. She's been an assessor. She's a DBT trainer. So I interviewed her, and it was really fun because here I have this great friend, and I knew she was at Amberwing, and this project gave me a chance to really understand what Amberwing does, like, and the role it plays. So I focused on just a couple parts of our interview, but starting with the services, you know, she specifically has worked with the counseling staff here at Hermantown. They work through the referral process of getting students to go to Amberwing for that 3-week training. And specifically in 2017, they did a whole program where they worked through specifically with the principals, with the dean of students and social workers, including, and one more, special education teachers, to really emphasize that DBT training. And then you add the fact that they've, you know, worked through, you know, with students, helping them get back here, back to the classroom, and working with parents, you know. That's something they've just done just for Hermantown, and again, other schools as well. But it's just pretty cool to see that the services that they had. One thing I just couldn't help but ask her was the impact of COVID-19. And, you know, she focused on the fact that obviously, like a lot of us, we had to go virtual, right? And that caused stress in some ways. The virtual option was tricky at first, like for everybody, but it's also offered virtual options that have continued through this day. So if somebody can't make it or something like that, they have that available. But something that Chelsea said was that she saw a lot of patients struggle a lot during COVID. Saw more depression, especially like in lack of motivation. And so even when students come in today, COVID-19 is still one of the highest stressors. Again, this is mostly from the high school or middle school world, but it certainly was an impact that needed to be done. So then I said, well, what about us teachers? You know, those are in the classrooms. Like, how can we, you know, really reach out to these students who maybe have been there and come back, or what's needed? And she had some really insightful things. Number one, the focus was that, you know, coping with mental illness is different for every student. So there's not some blanket statement that needs to be done. And so that's something that teachers need to understand as well. But she actually compared it to like a physical illness, to where, you know what, every physical illness has to be dealt with, you know, similarly, but also uniquely. And so she said that is something that is super important. But more than anything, and I'm going to quote her here, she said, lastly, I feel strongly it is important to educate all students on mental illness. 50% of people will experience mental illness in a lifetime. So we all need to understand that this is not something that is going to go away or that should be shunned, but that's something that we need to make sure we understand, offer coping strategies, and just continue to educate ourselves on as we go through. So I thought that was just a really neat thing that educators could do. I appreciated that a ton as I go forward. So I asked her some of the changes she's seen in mental health throughout her time at Amberwing. And the biggest one, I don't think this is a huge surprise, but is the explosion of social media. It is certainly fueling anxiety. It can be fueling substance abuse, depression, isolation, just that lack of connection. It can be a problem. The good news of the changes, she's seen a lot less of that stigma, maybe because of education on mental illness, but also that there's been more people coming forward. So is that good or bad? You know, I don't know, she said, in terms of, is it better or worse that more people are coming forward? Maybe it's because it's more open and people are willing to open up to that. But on the other side of that, again, just going back to that social media piece, one thing she said was, one of her focuses has really become educating parents about cell phones, social media, everything together, to make sure that they are aware of it and can understand the potential that's there. So the other thing then, again, just coming back to it over and over again, the work being done with DBT in schools will hopefully make it that it will be less likely, if people can have these DBT skills, that even though mental health issues have risen, that they can have the tools to process through that. So I really appreciated my time with her. Again, as a good friend who we hang out with our kids together, to talk about this was really, really neat. I then had to interview Dave Thompson. He's been a counselor here at Hermantown for 25 years. I was only able to do this via email because it was really tricky. But I just asked him a couple questions, and the role of Amberwing in Hermantown has been huge. He started off by sharing how prior to Amberwing, you know, kids who had this had to come forward for any sort of reason, there could be a 4 to 6 week wait, and or maybe have to go down to the Twin Cities, head down south by everyone there. And it wasn't localized. It wasn't comfortable. It was difficult to do, which again can add stress to it. But he really did emphasize that 3-week program and the positive it's had on a lot of students here at Hermantown. They focus on that DBT skills, those 4 areas, which include, let me get my notes here right, the where we have mindfulness, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. And he has just seen how when students have those skills, not everything goes perfectly, but there's a huge change in them. And there's those coping skills, and having those tools allows them to make that transition even back to school a whole lot easier. So the other thing Amberwing, of course, has provided is just so many resources. And I'm going to quote him here at the end of his email, where he just said, "My opinion is Amberwing has been a critically and highly effective resource for our students and those students from all area schools." So more than anything, I'm just glad I know of Amberwing, but hearing that alone taught me just how important this is here. So to wrap up, what does the future look like? You know, we are all in this together. At least that's how I approach my classroom. And so I asked Chelsea again. She hated this question, but I said, if Amberwing were to be described in one word, what would it be like? And she goes, "Come on, you're forcing me to answer this?" And she goes, fine, holistic. And I thought that was just such a great word choice. I chose this image on purpose just so you can see like holistic is everything, but we all have to be in it together just to work with any student who might be like, I'm nervous, I don't know what's going on. But you have support, you have tools. We're going to get you across. We'll help you in the ways that are needed. And Amberwing has certainly been one of those either key people holding us up, has been a friend there cheering on, but it's that holistic approach, which I really appreciate about Amberwing, that I will be using more and more in my class as we move forward. So again, I shared the Amberwing resource on there, but I use Amberwing and Chelsea, Mr. Thompson, and then that suicide, and that's been going on. But hope you enjoyed a little bit of the northern flavor of what's been going on in terms of a local project for our local history of psychological just influence. And so, yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.